Humans, we are so intellectual, so smart, so capable, and we are really good at detecting this thing that we call BS until the BS suits what we actually want. As humans, we share a common enemy, a seemingly faceless enemy that has the ability to understand and obtain every bit of knowledge that we don't know. The name of this enemy, I think we can call him deception.
Hi there. I'm Deception.
And through his friends, we have greed, a lust for power, or megalomania. All of these things come from deception. Eliminating our common enemy, deception, requires knowledge of what he looks like and how he moves. But due to deception being a master trickster, it becomes virtually impossible by our own will. Deception masks itself into everything that you've ever wanted. That's why it works. It's so easy to mistake our neighbor or even our human opponent as the enemy because they themselves can fall into deception's trickery. Remember, deception can take any shape, any form at any time. So when you really think about it, it's like, who are we as humans? How can we point the finger at somebody else despite what they may believe and decide that they are the true enemy when they're really a product of what greed, lust for power, and deception produces? When they're really a product of deception, just like we too can be products of deception. How are they the enemy? I think we're looking at the wrong place. It's much easier to blame a specific person, idea, or party rather than the problem in and of itself that keeps getting away with it. So we've all been taught at some point that a bunch of really, really smart scientists put in the effort to understanding ourselves as humans so they can understand our survival tactics and really put into words why we behave the way we behave. There was Maslow, for example, who came up with what was eventually turned into a pyramid. My short time on this planet combined with Maslow, combined with, bits of my education, I also have my own concepts as to what we as humans need and what we do in order to ensure our survival. I believe that things that we prioritize are safety, which could also go hand in hand with money, love, belonging, community, worship, whether that's to be worshipped or to worship, self-esteem, and respect. This is what we prioritize in order to excel to our fullest potential. Harmony, peace, and love could come from all of these things. But what happens when it doesn't? We must collect every inch of leverage obtainable on this earth in order to reach to the ascent of the pyramid. I don't even know if that sentence makes sense, but you get what I'm saying. Maybe the assumption is that with knowledge comes peace, comes understanding. There is the ability to maybe save the world if you're that type of self-righteous person with a God complex. But the point is, I feel like some people think that with knowledge comes peace and understanding because they're able to control their reality and they're able to control the reality of others. This is what happens when people suddenly obtain a strong thirst for power. A lot of people, once they ascend to one height, you notice that they want to go greater and greater and greater. Hence why there's a bunch of billionaires proactively trying to extend human life by creating something that allows them not to die, God knows what. And why a lot of them are also trying to go to space. It's because once you've reached a certain goal, you see how many possibilities there is and you see how many things that you actually don't know. Control and submission. I'll explain these further in case you're confused. But hey, you still may be thinking you're above this. You're not easily deceived. You're street smart. You're book smart. You're all the smart. You got it. You're sharp. You're sharp. I get it. I get it. All these things, money, power, would put them at the top of the food chain. Look at every war anybody has ever fought. What was it about? World War One, the Cold War, the French and Indian War, the American Revolution. Greed. Greed often establishes itself where there is a deficit in the person who allows greed to encapsulate them. So how perfect is it that there are things that know what you desire, the contents of your heart? Spoiler alert, it always works. It is important to be self-aware enough to know that nobody on this earth is above being deceived.
I like what you said. Nobody is above me, even if they think they can outsmart me. It's true. Humans are weaker than me.
I can admit that.
Especially heavy consumers. They know I exist, but they don't care. They don't take responsibility for their willingness to be deceived.
Especially in Hollywood, too. In fact, let's talk politics and Hollywood. Hollywood, I feel like, is the playground of mankind. At our peak performance, Even if you don't have talent, you're still performing on a day-to-day basis in order to get people to buy into the act that you're selling. That is what Hollywood is. Politics and Hollywood, however, I think there's a common understanding amongst most people that these two have a lot in common and they intersect often. Hollywood is intended to sell you a dream, a fantasy, a lifestyle that seems too good to be true for the average person. Unlike politics, depending on who you decide to be a stan of, some people are still trapped in the allure of Hollywood. Many people have had great ambition and great aspirations to be famous since childhood, like their favorite singer, actor, or athlete. Being rich, admired, and successful put many of these people at the top of the food chain. Being an internet baby and being Gen Z, I grew up watching celebrities on e-news, seeing them on People magazine at grocery stores, and basically watched them be humiliated and sensationalized for the sake of coin. I remember when being on talk shows like Ellen seemed like such a big deal.
It was a big deal back then before everyone could be famous. They weren't letting just anyone on magazines and TV shows.
I understand, but that's true. There was still a larger-than-life hype exacerbated by record companies and publicists, fans, and sometimes the celebrities themselves that existed because they did not want to drop the act. They didn't want to drop the ball and not play into the fantasy of who they were pretending to be. That's the reason why a lot of celebrities had to have media training. That's why Kanye West is so labeled as problematic and crazy and bipolar, even though he may be bipolar. That's part of the reason why they can use that against him, because he doesn't buy into the fantasy that they're trying to sell you, that they've been selling you. That fantasy, guys, is called deception. So if you think you've never bought into deception, you've never been tricked before, you can't convince me that as a kid you thought Nickelodeon wasn't just innocent. You can't convince me that you haven't watched certain movies, certain children's movies, and looked back as you were older and be like, dang, this is what they were really trying to say.
Riot going on. I'm here to protect you.
I don't need any protection.
Believe me, she doesn't.
Arnold, you make my girlhood tremble. Let go! My dad is a cop!
I'm sure that I'd love to. That is, if Arnold doesn't mind making it a threesome.
That's it! Patrick, your genius is showing.
Where?
I'm a sword swallower.
The crazy part is the truth is in our face. And we can't even tell most of the time. How crazy is that? With the age of the internet booming, celebrities had a harder time maintaining that sensationalized status in the way that they did in the early 2000s. They have this diminished halo that once shined really bright, and their godlike effect severely died down because, honestly, a lot of them talk too much. They have to talk too much. Once record companies and management found out that it was a great way to make more money and connect with your fans, they were forced to speak, and now we know who they really are. Thus, the act is dropped, deception becomes truth, and we are able to see for maybe 50% of who these people really are. This is a more obvious take, but we see that even record label companies and people who control these celebrities, they're engaged in high-level deception, not only because they want us to be deceived, because they're deceiving themselves into believing that they're doing what they're supposed to do as part of the Hollywood machine. They're doing what they're supposed to do as their manager, as a studio executive, as whatever, in order to advance their careers and a domino effect into their families' lives, their neighborhood lives. We see this a lot with rappers. We see this a lot with rappers like Jay-Z, but we see this a lot with different people telling us that they're selling the Black community nonsense in order to advance their life because they feel like it's a necessity. In order for them to help their people, they have to be rich because their people are not going to listen to sound teaching. They'd rather be lost. So leaders of the Black community feel like they have to tap dance. So yeah, it's whose fault is it?
If you fall for it, then it's your fault.
Yeah. It's the same thing. Just how racists back in 2008 and 2016 were trying as hard as they can to paint Obama as a bad person, trying so hard to tarnish Obama's reputation as an iconic figure in the Black community. Somebody who was a pillar and representative of hope and excellence and the American dream. I mean, he represented the ability to ascend to the top. Right? Politics, Hollywood, and to be honest, a lot of y'all's relationships, we've all fallen victim to deception. What's even worse, though, is that some people have prioritized optimistic fantasy so much that they can't even tell real from fake anymore. They can't even tell right from wrong anymore because we've been so brainwashed. The way you can beat deception is by spending a little bit less time in your fantasy world and stepping into the objective truth of reality. And the truth never hides. It's always in plain sight. It's your flag. trying to paint Obama as a bad person.
During his time in office, Obama authorized a significant increase in drone strikes. In fact, there were 10 times more strikes under his administration than under George W. Bush. These drone strikes primarily targeted countries like Pakistan, Somalia, and Yemen, and were justified as a means to combat terrorism while minimizing risks to American soldiers. But here's the kicker. While these strikes were touted as precise and surgical, the reality was far more grim. Human rights groups and investigative journalists have long challenged the administration's claims of precision. The Bureau of Investigative Journalism reported civilian casualty figures that were significantly higher than what the White House acknowledged. Hundreds, perhaps even thousands of civilians lost their lives due to these operations. Yet people still speak highly of Barack Obama as if he's a blameless president, as if he didn't commit genocide in multiple countries. People criticize Donald Trump for being a liar and a racist, and for sexualizing women and not caring about immigrants. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris for supporting a country that goes against their beliefs and their own systems, when the truth is, you guys know the truth. If you would admit it to yourself, the truth is most presidents have played a strong hand in murder. But people like to be deceived, like Tara was in this video. Or was she deceived? Was she just playing into the fact that many people see Obama as a pillar of excellence,